Mm-hmm.
The second question I have is, are you voting, and why is this election so important? And there's a second part to that, which is, what effect will this election have on Black America? Richard, I'll start with you. I know you're voting, right? And I'm going to start with you because of the look you just gave. You're on mute again.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, there's no question that everybody should vote. It seems really straight to me. The people that say that, voting is stupid or irrelevant, well, okay, so it could be. But there are two choices. One is it's stupid and irrelevant and you do it and it doesn't mean anything. The other one is it's stupid and irrelevant, but maybe it actually does mean something. So not voting just doesn't make any sense to me. I just had a discussion with my son, actually. He was just here, and that's the reason I joined late. We were talking about his schooling and other stuff. But the election is really important for me because the number one issue for me is actually climate change. So obviously, social, racial, and all the other problems that are facing the country are extremely important. But this is actually an existential crisis. And if Donald Trump wins, I don't believe there's. I think the chances for the planet to actually survive, and I mean not the planet. The planet's going to be fine, but for people to survive and for the world to go in a way that is even approaches anything close to a chance for being sustainable is completely gone. So that's why this election is extremely important. And even with Biden, I think he's a middle of the road guy, and so I don't, I'm already frustrated with him because he after, I want to put this politely. I have a very graphic way that I put this to people that can handle it, and I don't feel comfortable here saying my analogy, but basically, if you get in a fight with somebody, they've beat the hell out of you, um, and then after they beat you down, you then turn around to them and extend your hand and say, "Hey, well, how can we make this good for you?" I don't understand it. So he's already saying we're going to reach across the aisle. We're going to figure out how to make this work for everybody. Okay, so I don't really get that, but that's a little bit of an aside. So the election's important for all of the reasons that Donald Trump is a complete douche and needs to be taken out. Environmental being the top of the important stack for me. All of the rest of it doesn't matter. If literally the oceans are taking over the first 10 miles of every coastline, racial injustice will become it will become worse, and it will become a lot less important on some level because people will just be looking at straight survival, and all of the gradients below that won't matter as much.
But
So,
I
how
was
will it affect the Black community? I just dipped into that. So I can't imagine things getting less uh, racial and less divisive with Donald Trump still in the office. That just seems really obvious. So, if we want to get away from divisiveness and racial divisiveness, then I think that you have to move away from Donald Trump because that's what he is.
But I was reading something this morning, and they listed about 10 different issues that people felt were important for this upcoming election.
Mhm.
And climate change was one of the last ones. It was like
Yep.
number 10.
Yep. The most important issue, absolutely the most important issue, and it's not sometimes doesn't even make the list. It doesn't make any sense. So it affects absolutely every person's life on the planet, and it will affect economies, and it will affect everything. And like the wildfires in California, I don't understand how that goes to the bottom of the list. The
Yeah.
hurricanes in Louisiana, how does it go to the bottom of the list? Famine in Africa, how does that go to the bottom of the list? I don't get it. So on a world stage, it's by far and away the most important thing we have to discuss. And people will prioritize all kinds of other stuff, thinking those things are more important. But if the climate change thing is real, and I believe it is, all of those things become much, much less important. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I hope that race relations is the #1 issue. That would be awesome, because that means that we've gotten past the existential crisis that is screaming down on us.
Yeah. Jasmine, I think this is one that you can answer. Are you voting? And why is this election important?
Yes, I'm voting. And I think this election is important because, one, I think a lot has happened over the last couple of years. And I think that, so I have a little bit of a different approach. I feel like it is important because I think our two last presidents have taught us a lot. One, they taught us that anything is possible. So I'm always going to try and find the silver lining. That anything is possible, being that we had an African-American male be the president. And then the second being that someone who has absolutely no political ties or any lineage in that area could come and be president. I think if there is a positive that we can sift through, that would be the one that I would find. But I think that it's important because we are at a place right now where we are like extremely divided. And I think that in order to make that change, I think people have to get involved. And I think people have to understand that not speaking up previously, or not whether they didn't vote or whatever, has what created kind of like where we are right now. And I think it's important that people get involved, I think.
But can I ask this question though?
Yes.
So playing devil's advocate, and somebody else can chime in, or Jasmine, you can answer it as well. Playing devil's advocate, we've been voting. I'm gonna go from the pure Black perspective. We've been voting all of this time, and I can pull up a Gil Scott-Heron album, and he's going to talk about from the 60s and 70s the same problems that we have today, almost verbatim. So does that mean that voting has really changed anything over the past 50 years? Or is it still the same? And yeah, we're going through the process, and it's like going in the club and the guy's not dressed nice and he's never going to get an opportunity to date any of the women in there, but he's still going to ask. So is that what it is?
I feel like in history with everything, there is a significant period where things are really, really terrible. Things are bad. And then it gets to the point where it's really, really terrible. And that's where people decide to get mad enough, or decide to be intolerant and do something different. You know, slavery went on for a very long time. And then, you know, it came to a place where people became educated and became smarter and learned how to work together and overcome it. So I just think that with everything, there's always, nothing changes overnight. You know what I mean? You have to get enough people with the like-minded idea and the power and the courage to stand for something different. And I think the election is showing people that the election itself is not all that it stops at. There's a lot more levels to it, but at least that's a start. And I think that with this being, which is sad, with this being such a like a reality show, political type of deal, it's touching people because of the hysteria of it that it would never touch. So at least people who probably never listened before are probably listening and at least thinking about it and having conversations that they may not have previously had.
Eric, to ask you a follow-up question, I'm gonna word it a little different. Number one, are you voting? But number two, do you think this election will make a difference within the Black community? Or do you think it'll be status quo?
I am voting. Early voting starts tomorrow. Me and my wife will be in line. Well, we leave it at the house at 5 tomorrow morning. So we'll be in line to vote. It is important and it does make a difference. And I say that what the Supreme Court did in 2013 in repealing Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act is, to me, in my opinion, the first of many steps to come. So if Trump is reelected, he's going to appoint, as he's already done, I believe there's already 200 or so he's already appointed to the federal bench. And if he gets Barrett on the Supreme Court, as well as possibly another Supreme Court justice, we're going to see a lot of social settled laws repealed. And that is not what the country should be. I mean, we're a diverse population, and settled law should be settled law. We can't tout ourselves as having individual rights and freedoms when individuals appointed on the federal bench or the Supreme Court can bring their religious philosophies and or their personal ideologies that affect millions of lives. So I believe it's definitely makes a difference. We aren't where we should be given the history of this country and what's written on paper, but voting is a step and an only actual tool we have, only non-violent tool we have to actually change the status quo.
I guess I'll go to Warren. Warren, number one, are you voting? Do you think the status quo will change with this vote? Just picking up where Eric left off. Do you think the status quo will change? You're probably close to my age. I think you're like a couple years older than me. But we were in the military together, so we've seen how bad things had gotten in the military when it came to race relations and certain things. But do you think that voting is going to make a difference, and this particular vote will change the status quo?
Well, first of all, I will not be voting this year, simply because 2 weeks ago I dropped my ballot off at the registration office to make sure no malarkey goes on with it. So it is there, it is registered.
You lost me on that, but that means you did.
Well, I've already voted.
Okay, okay.
I won't be voting the rest of this year.
Okay.
Don't anybody take that the wrong way. I got a big mouth when it comes to politics, and you should know I'm not going to sit on the sideline. According to what Eric is saying, I certainly understand. One of our big problems is we have always been very trusting people. You know, we'll give somebody the opportunity to do what they say they're going to do. They don't do it, and often we say, okay, this is something we've probably gotten accustomed to, being misled for so many years. But I am not a Republican, and one of the things that it really gets under my skin with them, but it's a tactic that works, and it works well. Eric was talking about them changing the Voting Rights Act in 2013. Yes, they did. All of that and everything that they've done up to this point was for right now. They took a vote for Supreme Court Justice from Barack Obama, and they got two. Trump already has two, and he's got Amy Coney Barrett about to be confirmed. So everything that they've done in the past was for this day, because they start with a long-term plan to get where they want to be. So if they stack this court, once they stack this court, they can move all of their agenda through with people who believe the same way that they do. And I think far too often we don't follow up with the promises that were made. And I think we need to stay on top of every politician that we ever put in a position, make them accountable to us for the things that they've been promising us for since our existence in this nation. And they fall back on it, and we sit back and say, okay, well, we got to wait for the next one. No, it's time to stand up and start forcing them to follow up with our agendas. And until that happens, I don't know how much is going to change, but it's certainly, I've certainly had enough of it. I don't know how anybody else feels, but far too long. We're missing those elements of consistency. And you know, if it's not gonna happen overnight. Of course, we all know that. I saw a picture a couple of weeks ago of an older Black lady holding a sign up that said "Stop Police Killings." Well, that sign came from 1950, but it's as relevant today as it was back then, because nothing has happened. We're going through the same things. And so until we stand up and continue to push these politicians to do what we need them to do to make life better, not only for white folks or the poor, I mean the wealthy, but the poor folks, those in the middle class, and everybody who lives in this nation. And so that's where we have to start. And part of that is teaching all of ours, young folks, our children, our nieces and nephews, go to vote. My mother took me when I was 18, and I don't believe I've missed a vote since then. And so I'm always going to make my voice
Is
heard.
that like 40, 50 votes you've been participating
Well, it's been quite a few of them.
in?
And there'll be, as
Keep
long
on
as
going,
God
Uncle
gives me the
Renee.
breath to continue, I will keep on going. So, yes, absolutely.
Hey, Ed, so I'll go with you. Piggybacking
Okay.
on something that
Okay.
Warren said, if everyone goes out and votes, and it's going to come down to the Electoral College, doesn't that mean that, number one, make sure you answer if you're voting, but doesn't that mean that potentially everyone goes out and votes and we all agree that, hey, Donald Trump should be out of office, but then the Electoral College, based on that system, he still ends up winning the nomination?
It's those key states that you have to make sure that you get out and vote that makes the difference with the Electoral College, first off. This thing about, yeah, I vote all year. My kids vote, push that issue. What Eric said, does voting matter? Okay. Now let me explain, ask the question, if voting did not matter, why would you have such major voter suppression? Why would you have poll taxes? Why would you have bombings of churches? Why would you have black women's throats cut down in Mississippi, thrown on the side of the road that was going to register to vote or trying to get people to register to vote if voting did not matter? Wouldn't nobody put that kind of effort out to keep you from voting if voting did not matter? If you understand the history of this country, we are talking about what Rich was saying, the key thing that elevates climate control, climate change, and all that deals with white supremacy. That's the root of it, of everything, the ills on a global scale. European white folks don't care about nothing but money and dominating and so-called power, so they'll destroy the planet just to get a fat pocket. Okay. Do I vote? Yeah, I vote all the time. Voter suppression is the key. Understand what has been taking place. Other thing that has not happened, like Warren said, quid pro quo. We have not demanded politicians to come through after we give them our vote. We act like that's okay. No, it's not okay. It's not okay. And then, then we always hear, well, maybe it's God's will. Well, God's will for who? For who? Is God's will that they abuse, rip, steal, murder, destroy, kill the planet? Help me with that. So that's a lot of issues that's come to play that's very complicated. And I don't think it's correct forum for this, but if anybody wants to sit down and call me and debate and spend some quality time with me, I'll burn both your ears off for a couple hours. But voting is important.
Okay.
And it does make a difference. The key is with Electoral College is to make sure that those in those states that can swing the vote, have to swing the election. Those are the key states that we need to get out and vote. And those are the key states like South Carolina or Florida, where they really push voter suppression. Those are the states that they know if they lose, they don't win. Those are the states we need to make sure that everybody gets out and votes and take this thing dead serious.
Abubak, to ask a question based on what Ed and Warren just said, what should number one, did you vote or are you going to vote? And also, what should the ask be? So if Black people, everybody seems to be in agreement, or at least a few people seem to be in agreement, that we do vote and we do expect certain things, but we never get what we expect, then what should the ask be? What should Black people be asking of their politicians?
So first, yes, last week was the early voting in Texas. I was out there 2 hours the first day, and I voted. What should the ask be? I don't think it should be an ask. I think it should be a demand.
Absolutely.
And we've been asking for 50, 60, years. And it's no longer an ask anymore. And the demand should be for something to be done about this economy and how it works and who it works for. I saw a thing, and it may seem slight, and it just may be something that bothered me, but I can't remember actually really right now, I just don't remember the name of the drug, but it had to do with the opioid stuff last week. And the company that was putting out the opioid got fined $80 billion, and the company's forced to close now. And that was, I don't know if anybody else saw that. That was in the news last week.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to me that that came about, considering all the drug problems that we have had in our community over the decades. And now, people are getting rehab and going to therapy and all of that stuff for their issues, but it was nothing that, we asked for it, but it was nothing we ever got. Or I should say, we didn't even know to ask for it. So the demand economy, if you want to make things, fair, the economy, take care of that economy. Take care, help people understand what's going on with this capitalism thing. Yes, capitalism works. It's who it works for, and that's something that we need to understand. The laws are made. The laws are made by people for them, and we have to understand this law and what's going on with this law. And that's what happens with voting, and that's what happens with getting people in there to do things. But again, it's the demand that that people have to do, and the money, because the whole thing about the politics and the economy is the money, right? So we as a people need to understand about this money thing, and understand. The question, it gets kind of deep for me, because it's a psychology, and it's a mass psychology that has been going on for 400 years. So yes, we are in this situation, but after 400 years. We need to start thinking about that sociological Stockholm syndrome that has happened to us. That people, we're all human beings, so we desire to have things and understand how our money gets spent. I remember when the pandemic first started, we talked a little bit about, and this was here in San Antonio, the lines for people to come to get food, and you were seeing some really expensive cars out there to get to get food, for these lines. It's just how we spend money, and understand what this economy is, and understand what this money does, and how we need to I'm even leery to say the word educate, because it's beyond books. It's beyond a book type education that needs to go on. This is a psychology that needs to happen in order for people to try to understand, to reverse basically what has happened to us for 400 years. And I'm saying us, but actually really it's a worldwide problem. It's been going on since the ships started flying across the Atlantic. It was going on before that. And just people need to understand what that history is. And if you want to make this planet and everything else better, start with the people. When I think about it, just, the minds that people have, the minds that I wish we had, all over the planet, how it's disregarded, and we might have billions of geniuses out there that you just don't know because they were never given an opportunity. So that's my take on that. We need to truly demand and understand demand, and I think we've been asking and turning the other cheek for too long.
I go a step further if I can.
Go ahead.
And you say demand, you're absolutely right. We tell these politicians, you get one term to show progress. You may not complete your task, but you need to have it in place, or you don't get a second term. So
Absolutely.
start from day one. move this thing forward, and then let's make something happen. Give somebody else a chance to pick up the baton and continue. But if you don't make progress in that first term, I'm through with you, because I'm tired of being told the same thing constantly.